synonymous with fear. Kenrick drummed anxiously with his fingers on the tabletop. He had put aside the mechanism when his mood had suddenly diminished, as it lately was wont to do. Now he just sat, feeling uninspired and drained. He remained as such even when one of his companions of the Otto workshop entered and stood right before him. "Sir, it has been days and..." "Yeah, no, damn it." He banged with his fist, ending the rhythmic taps. "Well, sir, we got word. Yet another expedition did not find him. They followed a trail, but lost it." He leaned forward in his chair, stroking his hands through the brown and loose hair. "Yep, sounds about right. Mad or not, he won't be found." "But what does Master German say? His old friend up in Leaves for the labyrinth. I mean, he and Master Vitus were friends, right?" "Yeah, I suppose you could call him that. I suppose." He looked down at the prototype trick weapon he was experimenting with. Only a heap of scraps, as it appeared currently. "Kenrick?" "German says nothing, all right. And what's there to say? You don't hear the prospectors moaning about every person going missing. How do you explain it to begin with?" "No, I guess it's complicated." "Yeah, it is. Besides, German has enough to think about." "But we lads started talking just now. What does it mean for the Otto?" "What does it mean?" "Yeah, has German said anything?" He searched his mind, and like it had been said, German seemed to care little about the old Yarnum workshop. He finally clapped his hands together. "It means nothing. The Otto workshop is as it is. German can say what he likes. But we have hunted old Yarnum for years now, and it has been going fine." "Yeah, we thought the same. Nothing need changing." "It is a shame, though. Seems like the end of an era. Never really thought what it would be without old Vitus around." But he would want us to continue, right? For you to be the next master." "Yeah, if the lads are okay with it. Someone needs to run the operation and check up with the old workshop." "Perhaps we ought to do a little something tonight. For Vitus." "Yeah." He returned his gaze to the materials on the table. So did the young woman. "What you making?" Nothing really. Just something with a little more kick." "So what say you, kid? Anything like you thought?" The pair strolled through Yarnum's sunlit cathedral ward. To his dismay, he had not expected patrol duty to be part of Hunter's work, likely due to how the superiors had verbally danced around the term. He was just on the cusp of considering exactly how much of monsters, ghouls and fiends there actually were to begin with. Patrolling a sunny day through Yarnum certainly did not fit the bill. "Honestly, Jura, not particularly." "No? I can see why. Enjoy it. It will soon pass. Tonight you will come to see the city for what it really is.
Which is?
A beast-ridden and curse-rotten heap!
Rumors of beasts had only just become more than rumors. It was a reality. A failed trial of the gods that displayed the weakness of man. Or something of the kind. He and his mentor Jura knew that there was a problem with beasts. They cared little where they came from, only that they were to be sent back to wherever that was. One tends to be less philosophically inclined if being in a hunter's shoes, slaying beasts left and right. A more menacing threat, in the guise of a rumor, was that a careless hunter would become drunk on blood and fall under the blade of the hunter of hunters. Though he believed it was simply tales to scare one straight, and despite the graveness each of its narrators shared, it was part of why he had been drawn to the trade. The whole spectacle was precisely why he enjoyed it. Train hard and be true to yourself so that you might do the venerable work to keep the people safe, just like the old legends. But Jura, I've heard beasts are not afraid of daylight, that people are in danger right now. Why then hunt solely in the night?
Who told you that?
Well, everyone says so. But is it true?
Ah, he muttered. Well, that may be. But they don't favor bright light. The city crawls with beasts in the night. They are excellent predators and they know how to hunt. As hunters, we need to adapt to their environment. But don't get too eager now, lad. Remember what the Grandmaster always says.
I know. Fear the old blood.
Which means?
To not give in to the hunt, I'm aware.
Good. It will come to show tonight.
Will the kegs be hunting too?
Of course they are. Why ever would they sit and slouch during a hunt?
I just think it's strange. Why have two of the same faction?
Hey, Kenrick goes way back with German. And he just has a different style. That's about it.
I bet there are other reasons also.
Well, they used to be called the Auto Workshop, but when Kenrick took over they took a different... how to put it, a more unorthodox approach. But who cares really? We are all here to hunt, and must do so properly.
They returned from their uninspired watch to the workshop. As the sun would soon set, the night approached. German was nowhere to be seen. The younger ones, like him, paid it no heed. He knew German to be the reclusive old master that had probably grown too old for this work. But other, more veteran members suffered an apparent moral disability from it. Although Jura was some years older than him, he was not of that age to be stricken by this effect.
So, will you settle for the cleaver then?
Jura asked while they mentally prepared in the tranquil garden among the myriad of white, shining flowers. Yes, I'm certain. It is most reliable and versatile. Jura leaned back and stretched his arms behind his head, with a smug and displeased smirk.
Sawspear is better.
Aren't they basically the same?
That's what every novice says. You'll know, soon enough.
Hey, Jura, were you ever in the labyrinth?
No, sorry to disappoint, kid. Few hunters today started off like that. I was actually recruited by the church. Did I ever tell you that?
Yes.
I was the best hunter in all Yarnum, and I don't say that lightly. I was the best to be found. So one day, I'm in one of my towers, you know. Then I hear like a swooshing sound, like a powerful gust of wind swept by, but no draft.
He had started to become engaged in his storytelling, seeing how he gestured along with his words.
I looked around down my rifle, but see no trace of life. I jump high in my seat when a voice addresses me from below. There he stands, German, looking up casually as if he were there to deliver the daily paper. He made me an offer to hunt real prey and to do Yarnum a valiant service. Young as I was back then, who could say no? By the way, did you know why he picked me out of all? And not only for my skill.
Yes, I do. Jura raised his eyebrows in disbelief.
Because I was always calm and paid great respect to my prey. I know the value of life has always been conflicted. I love animals. So when I got this opportunity to use my killing skills to save lives, I didn't hesitate.
It's a neat story.
I think so too.
As the hour was closing in on the setting of the sun, the absent master appeared. He meandered towards the workshop and paid little attention to the rest. As he passed two of them, he nodded to Jura, but stopped before him, turning his eyes down at him. The Grandmaster was very tall and slender. His hair was white and reached almost down to his shoulders. His eyes were tired.
Who is this you have taken to, Jura? Henrik, sir. Tonight is his first hunt.
Jura wrapped an arm around him and shook him a little before releasing him again.
Ah. The first hunt. And with the cleaver, no less.
That's right. He answered as respectfully as he could. It was the first time he ever encountered the Grandmaster, and he found himself feeling somewhat intimidated, despite his calm and gentle tone.
Do you have a reason for picking that one in particular?
I think it is the most versatile. Good at killing beasts fast.
And why not the scythe? It is a cleaner way.
Well, with the cleaver I have both a sharp and jagged edge. And it's lighter than the scythe, sir.
Can't argue with that, I suppose. Will you be joining us, German?
Jura asked carefully. The old veteran looked briefly at him, then back at Henrik.
How did it come to be that you became a hunter, Henrik?
Huh? Through the church, sir.
The church?
Well, I have been an orphan all my life, and when no one would adopt, The church took me in. But, well, I really didn't have a knack for clerical work. So they made me a hunter.
Ah, you wanted to be a hunter?
Yes, absolutely, sir.
Ah, Henrik. Appointed by the church.
Henrik glanced awkwardly towards Jura, who only shrugged as discreetly as he could.
I will join the hunt tonight. Give me just a moment and then we will head out.
He disappeared into the workshop building, and Jura looked excitedly at Henrik.
Impressive, kid. You managed to rile up the old master into hunting. He must see something special in you.
What? Does he not hunt anymore?
No, not with us at least. But I don't think he bothers anymore. But this is going to be special. You behave yourself now, you hear?
Henrik instantly became nervous for his first hunt. Doing a poor job in front of Jura and perhaps other veterans was a wholly different story than mucking it up before the very leader of the pack. In short, German returned. It was no discreet fact that he had been using the exact same attire in all his years. His burgundy overcoat was faded and torn at the ends. The top hat was slightly crumpled and faded as well. His old cape made a sinister figure with its torn shape, looking more akin to that of scarred bat wings flowing behind him. At his side rested the crescent blade with his blunderbuss and folded handle slung on his back. The hesitation to hunt became that of thrill once the thought passed him that he would be accompanying the very first of the institution.
Let's be off.
Henrik looked around, suspicious at the early hour and everyone's lack of dismay. The old master left, and after him followed every of the gathered hunters. Already? Henrik whispered to Jura as they joined the procession. The sun is barely set. Jura carelessly threw his gaze towards the indicated young sunset.
Yes. But that's just how it is. But what's the point in waiting, right?
Well, I just thought hunting was under the cover of darkness.
Yeah, the church likely told you so. But what you did not know is that the beasts no longer care. They are many, they hunt in packs, and their ferocity is through the roof. Emboldened, they venture out when they please. The nights are the time when the people can safely hide behind closed doors, and we can truly reap the beast's numbers.
Nearing the exit gate of the garden, they found that German stood beside it, letting other hunters through while looking exclusively at him and Jura as they approached. Not needing to verbally express it, they stopped by his side where they stood until they were alone. It was serene to stand under the large oak that roofed their little place, surrounded by little white flowers that waved in the faint breeze.
Fear, Henrik,
the Grand Master said, not appearing particularly authoritarian, only tired and sympathetical.
You will find that it will save your life. It reminds you of the life you have, humbles you in front of the beasts. which have none. It is thankless work, but someone must do it, lest those overcome by the blood will go on in suffering, while inflicting even more suffering on others. But you understand this, don't you?
The words made the thought of fame and fortune for all his bravado on the hunt shrink. What he said felt to be truer and more satisfying than any prize he could be given. I do.
There will be a good hunter of you. We will make sure of it.
They entered into Cathedral Ward with every hunter together in a single public, ominous march. Each expression concealed by the brim of a hat or the cover of a face mask. The streets were largely vacated, but the occasional citizens gave their impressional gaze from either the sidewalk or from behind a window. Be they in pairs or small bundles of people, they would whisper eagerly or forebodingly with eyes latched onto them. Were they alone, they only stared, head turning with them slowly as they passed. Henrik felt little could speak against their actions, as for a long time rumors had spread. None of them seemed surprised, only a subtle terror of having to face that rumors were undeniably no longer rumors, but reality. A part of the group split off and headed towards Erdon Chapel, while they continued towards the Great Bridge. At its end, another group separated itself, heading towards Old Pyre Square. Henrik followed close behind German, who headed into the heart of central Yharnam. Further down, their group separated itself as they stayed put, while the handful of hunters pressed on towards Floorwall Street. Jorah went along with them. Up from an adjoining street came one lone hunter, one of the powder kegs, and just waved to their group before turning and heading back towards Old Yharnam.
Very good. Now see to them.
Upon German's announcement, the remaining hunters scattered without any form of further directive. Henrik felt there was no other choice but to stay behind, feeling sheepish.
Now it's a matter of awareness. Clearing the streets and telling all to head inside. Locking their doors.
He remarked whilst looking after the last disappearing hunter. Henrik nodded. Of course, certainly. Do they not argue? No complaints at all? German was impressively steadfast in his body language, and provided not even a sigh, leaving only his detached words with their meaning.
What can they say? Guardians sanctioned by the healing church arrive to save them from bloodthirsty beasts.
I suppose. Not wholly satisfied, he resumed to await the setting of the sun beside his master.
We wait for the night to descend so as to have the people tucked away.
German continued.
And of course, it is an old habit to hunt in the night. It is, after all, the hours of the beast.
So, how do we approach this? The master sighed.
Unfortunately, there are few tactics to the hunt. Keep your wits about you. Hunt within the quarter. Tonight, stay with me. But no, in coming nights, you may have to hunt alone.
He swallowed the lump that had formed in his throat. It was not always like this, was it?
No, it was not.
He did not know what to expect. A hunter must hunt, and the beast would certainly not reveal themselves, but need to be rooted out from their burrows, wherever they may be. The street grew darker, and the lights in the windows went out. A shot echoed out among the buildings.
The first fire,
German remarked ceremoniously. The hunt was on.
Come then.
Sounds of weapons fire and resounding roars of beasts was the melody of the night. Not far from where they had stood to watch the hunters enter the shadowy streets, did they hear a scream, a tone that broke through the cacophony, the scream of a woman. Henrik looked to his master, who had no time to spare for affirmative glances. He had already hurled himself towards the distinct sound. Henrik followed. The scream did not persist for long, but Henrik still clung to the idea of saving a life. German's feet impacted softly on the stone. He was soundless, while Henrik, although adept at his movement, was slightly more clamorous. Turning down from the cathedral ascent street, they could see the hulking and ghoulish posture of a hunched-over figure illuminated by the street lights. The light of the sun had left the sky, and they only had a kindly yellowish glow from the burning lanterns that exposed a sight not too pleasant to witness. The voracious monster had no ear for the silent steps of the hunter's approach, and continued to sit on its behind, bent over its feast. A crumpled and bloody dress emerged from behind it, with 2 feet clad in a pair of lovely high boots with heels. They moved limply along with the motion of the beast, tearing more and more chunks of flesh from the body. Another lay off to its side, the body of a man. Their attempt to ambush the creature failed once it turned its head slowly, with about 15 feet between them. Not quite a man, but not quite a hound either. A man becoming a hound. Irregular hair growths along the face, and an impressive mane of hair. The face still bore humanly features, which made the long and humongous jaw all the more horrifying. One arm had grown longer than its partner, both covered in black and bloody hair. The observation was brief, and as soon as it locked its eyes with his, German fired his weapon. The beast leapt to the side, standing still on its legs with a hunched posture, like its own spine was overcumbering it, having grown to nearly penetrate the skin with its freakish growth. Arms hung close to the ground with the longer almost touching it. Henrik then made the ill-contemplated action of glancing away from the beast and onto the cadavers. The man on his stomach, in a pool of blood with his hands stretched out towards the woman. She laid straight on her back, torn in half at the waist, but with an intact face, locked in an expression that contorted her face in pain and terror. Only for a few seconds did he look, and it was enough. It made him slow down, turning his face fully towards the view, in which time the beast jumped at him. Had it not been for the glistening swipe of a blade, the wound Henrik sustained would not have been as superficial as it was. He leapt backwards, holding over the upper arm where his garb was torn. Blood did not gush, but there was a red shimmering, accompanied by a surge of energy. German had stepped in between him and repelled the fiend, but he now felt the pain pulsating with something else. Like his blood literally was boiling, he grew angry, furious, and lunging in towards the beast. Like he would erupt with blood any second, all of his energies growing out of his control at the boiling of his blood, and he did not know what the climax would be. To idle while under such a surge would be impossible, for his mind was blank and did not respond to his attempt at thought. There was only a beast in front of him and a cleaver in his hand. His breath grew heavy and he charged, stepping in front of German and slashing and swiping furiously. The black man-beast scurried backwards, falling down on all fours. He immediately followed up by extending the blade in the next swing to better reach, but it insisted on retreating backwards, making his attacks miss. He had started to grunt loudly with each swing, and now brought the weapon behind his head for an overhead strike. But beasts are uncomfortably clever, and another appeared out from the shadows, slightly to the first one's side. Henrik was completely exposed for its malformed claws. Its assault was, however, hindered by German's blunderbuss exploding away around. But as there were now two, the former launched an attack of his own. Henrik only managed to put his cleaver between him like a shield and bashed with the broad side of the saw blade against the lunging form. The force sent him flying out in the middle of the street. Two pairs of glowing eyes now peered gluttonously at him lying on the ground, slowly approaching, ready to pounce. Like the wind, German swooped in behind the beast and the ginormous scythe blade reached around and pulled. The beast, although quick, was not quick enough for the first of the hunters. In his tug, the monster turned fully to him and he bashed its jaw with the pommel of the scythe in an upward motion with such force that the creature lifted from the ground as it was sent onto its back. He then turned his body while the scythe seemingly remained in the same position, tearing the blade from the handle and swung immediately at the second advancing beast. He slashed with such quickness it was uncanny, both due to the size of the blade and the flowing tactical motions he had. He finished up the flurry by tossing the folded handle to the ground and throwing forth his rifle from the back and firing at the beast, who let out a surprised and angry snarl that was mostly drowned out by the boom of quicksilver, rendering it momentarily stunned. He spun around, letting the rifle return to rest on his back, and turned his attention to the other threat by striking straight down with the curved blade. As the beast was still recovering from its trauma sustained by the pommel, it managed to shield itself with a cruel, distorted hand, blocking the sharp blade by grabbing it. It snarled back in such a way the bestial groan was underlined with the rasping of a man's, while German let go of the blade. In the blink of an eye, while the beast still held onto the blade's edge, positioned sideways over its throat. German plunged the long hilt into the latch, making the scythe whole once again, and with the downward thrust, cut clean through the hand and into the throat, decapitating it. In spinning back around to the second enemy, he tore the scythe from the body and swiped at the second beast. Henrik finally stood back up, folding up the cleaver and leapt in beside German. The Olden master ducked down with the scythe placed over his back, spun around and stepped forward with a devastating blow with the blunt side that hurled it into the building behind. Henrik continued onward, now feeling more composed and with a sense of control. One that may have spawned from the presence of his master, or simply the short reprieve. The beast tumbled onto the ground, landing upright on all fours. Staring into the glowy eyes, with a mouth that began slowly opening, he quickly fired a bullet at its head. It flinched, and he brought down the cleaver straight over its face. He did so again and again, sensing the tense resistance weakening, provoking him to further cut deeper and deeper, having blood spray over his face and chest. He suddenly leapt backward at having sensed the beast tense up suddenly, but once he raised the cutter again from a safer distance, he saw that it had simply been in the form of coming to rest with a thud against the stone ground. Its face, having previously bore no resemblance to the typical meaning of the word, was now further deformed by a crossed cut so deep it had changed its shape entirely. His breath became more rapid, and both his arms fell to the side, nearly dropping what they held. His attention was fixed on the part of the head where the eyes had been. Still he saw in his potent memory the sickening glow and the jaw that almost smiled morbidly at him. Although the threat was gone, he was overwhelmed by the fear he should have known in the midst of battle, and he nearly fell to his knees. He looked back at German. He stood before the previous, now still body, somberly with his head bowed. Apologies, Master. Henrik tried to formulate an excuse with his wild breathing and beating heart. German only shook his head. To him, or to the departed, was not distinguishable. First time is never easy, he finally remarked. I have mentored those that never got past their first night, but most reacted like you, or something akin to it. Henrik's breath was still hard. He tried to walk away from the carcass, but felt as if he would crumple from the attempt, and remained where he was. You can never truly teach one to remember what's important when they are overcome with fear. That fear takes root in some. That is why some continue to hunt and to hunt, time and time again. He looked up finally, but his expression was unseen from the shadow of his hat. And you are right to fear. He pointed down towards the crumpled body of the beast Henrik had slain. But fear not them. Fear that which might tempt you into becoming like them.
for they are just people, unfortunate enough that they could not resist. So be strong for them.
Henrik snorted with his dripping nose and ignored the tears. German had surely noticed them. He put the hilt on his back and the blade to his side.
No, I am not as young as I used to be. This night is over for me.
He walked up closer, and Henrik felt incapable of meeting his eyes.
But don't you forget, Henrik. Don't you forget who you are, and who they are. If you do, you have not only spat on their memory, but in the face of humanity. Remember the humility in the hunt, and why it is so. Else the fear will consume you and twist you into something very much like them. Don't you forget, my young hunter.
For a long time now, he had not faced the commonage, idling in the sacristy with the sound of feet shuffling and people finding their seats in the grand hall. He thought how different it was now from when he had been a scholar and doctor addressing weary patients, not a church congregation. He found himself longing back to the simplicity of it. The worried and desperate faces he could always banish with the holy blood. Taking the role as vicar came with the natural duty of holding sermons for the people that needed the faith. And as the foremost expert on the holy medium, he had to fit the part. Then he had keenly engrossed himself in the mythos as it related to their work, and then to manifest it in words and in the healing of the blood. He had delighted in every part of being the first vicar of the healing church. His brow was on the verge of dampness, and it grew increasingly difficult to be still in the chair. He wanted to up and walk, so he did, but quickly became aware it only worsened the anxiety and rushing heartbeat, so he sat down. This was the cycle he was caught within. For the last time he had faced the crowd of Yarnam had been terrifying. It was the evening where he announced the departure of the dearly missed Lady Maria, and what made it so terrible was that he had thought to have seen her amongst them, dressed in her old hunter's garb, sitting with her head slumped and trichone completely obscuring the face, with a streak of red staining her attire from the neck down. Each time he had tried to look away, she was there again, next to someone else. Could it have been the first patients that had been sitting in front of her on the benches? Were the clinic's blood ministers amongst them as well? Did she sit beside a blood saint or a peasant from old Yarnam? Had there even been a furry mug of an abhorrent beast right behind her at one point? Or had they all just been the regular people whose faces he commonly saw? He remembered how he had not been able to conclude the farewell ceremony on his own, and had never been able to muster himself to face them again. Were there more faces he had forgotten about? Would they be angry with him and speak out against him for all the things he had done to them? And by far the most terrifying, would Maria be amongst them again?
They are ready for you, Vicar.
A young cleric peeked around the corner and Lawrence waved her away, taking a bracing inhale and pouring down the last of the cup into his mouth. He walked out from behind the shrine and took position right in front of it. The masses became quiet, silently admiring their absent shepherd. It was as hard as he had anticipated. The eyes from man and woman, child and elder, looking to him for answers and comfort. In the moment he thought himself an arrogant fool for never having anticipated a future like this. Never in any world did he ever imagine he would be standing with such a message to deliver. Only an arrogant fool thought himself too grand that such a moment might never come. But now it was here, and it became hard to speak. But he had to. Let us pray. Let us wish. Good people, let us partake in communion. Hail the old blood. Praise be the holy blood. Were it not for fear, the frailty of men would take us. Praise the holy blood. The gathering echoed his last sentence. Now I am aware of the fear that has stricken our hearts. I share it with you. I am weary for you. A scourge has taken our town, sprung from the frailty of men. The holy blood will guide our way, but some are tempted by a fiend most unholy. With many speeches and conducted masses held under his belt, the ability to pluck the words and reasoning out of thin air was one he had mastered. Knowing the whole truth behind it, a gentle and believable lie was a trifle to conjure. It is true. Beasts lurk in the night. Though it ought not to have been a surprise at that point, the sound the gathering made was one of astonishment. Beasts that brave men and women hunt to keep all safe from their harrows. And you must all be wary for the beast, and let the hunters do the work of the church. Hushed voices circulated among the frightened people. Some were eagerly taking notes to publish in the papers, no doubt. But let not this fear rule you, good people. Have faith, for the church is working tirelessly, day and night, to unlock the mystery of this scourge. His optimistic change of tone silenced most of the whispers, but was quite a mission for himself to accomplish convincingly. And fear not for each other, for there are things you all can do in the name of the gods to aid us. Firstly, have a firm faith. The blood is a holy blessing and should not be feared, but give it the divine respect it is due. Those that use it for ill and dark intents are lured into the depths, becoming vile fiends that cannot tell right from wrong. Secondly, take part and aid us to secure the streets from these fiends. Remember that existence for a beast is a constant suffering. The hunters show them swift mercy by severing their link to this world. Do not interfere with their hunt, and do not conceal any information that may aid the hunt. Those that overindulge may yet be saved. Tell us, and we, the clerics of the Healing Church, will set them onto the holy path once more. For when you succumb to your beastly nature, there is no return, only the hunter's blade. Some sat in their seats with empty faces. Some looked to those they loved for sanctuary. Some had raised their hands up to their face in prayer, hoping they would not be next. But some did not take him for his word. Some looked angry, disappointed and betrayed. Some had exactly those faces he had always pictured they ought to have. His eyes found the eyes of a young constable. Standing to the sides, the blue eyes looked at him. They blamed him. He held his constable hat with both hands down in front of him. His posture was akin to one in mourning, but his eyes swore 1,000 oaths of vengeance. He did not blink, nor waver with his gaze, but focused the full wrath of his being straight at him and him alone. Around the stillness of the young constable's image, commotions started to erupt. Like he dreaded, some would not be as forgiving to his actions. They shouted, "Cure us! Abscond this scourge! How could this happen?" Out marched Logarius, not tolerating the sign of revolt. In tow were his ominous sentinels. They paraded out to form a line in front of Lawrence, and Logarius placed his own towering figure next to him.
"How dare you!"
His voice erupted resoundingly through the hall.
"How dare you sacrilege the fountainhead of the holy blood? The church art the hand of the gods. 'Tis only the beast that turn to bite their hands that feeds it."
He erected a hand with a finger pointed ahead and upward.
"Shame! Leave now. This place is for peaceful communion, and we will harshly instill manners in those that disturb their faithful."
The brutish men brandished their holstered swords, just to intimidate, while others waved with truncheons at those that took their aggressions too close. Lawrence felt an overwhelming anxiety strike him from the sounds, but foremost from the faces. The aggressors were forced out by the church's goons, while the others yet found comfort in the increasingly calming hall. Lawrence became lightheaded and needed to escape. He shoved himself past clerics that attempted to praise his efforts. He felt a creeping disgust that he, by all means, had to suppress. Stumbling and feverishly he looked around at worried faces. He cared for none. None knew him, and he wanted only a few ones there with him, some of which were unable to actually be there despite his yearning. But within short, he found himself regretting this desire. What would they say if they saw him like this? Was this how Maria had always felt?
Blood.
He grunted. He scanned around him to find a surprised-looking woman of younger years standing within proximity.
Bring me the blood,
he demanded while putting his hand to his forehead to hopefully soothe the sudden headache.
Apologies. The holy blood for you?
Her voice was gentle and attempted to calm the situation she found herself in. It made him irritated. He had no time for this novice and her emotions. He was about to fall apart, and it ought to be plain to see.
blood! By the gods! Give it here!
He roared at her, so much so that she jumped back and blinked in shock. A sting of regret hit him somewhere, but was quickly washed out among the other impressions. He sank down into a wooden chair along the wall, and she scurried away to fulfill his demand. He buried his face in his hands, and the long black hair fell down before him as he slumped forward.
Master Vicar?
A voice penetrated the flurry inside his head. He did not know it well, and he did not bother to look up.
There are turmoils outside. The churchly guard have taken to violence to quell the somewhat disturbed people.
He did not answer. He could not fully comprehend or picture the scenario. It disappeared too quickly from his mind. It was maddening. A burning ball of something had suddenly erupted in his chest as he had rudely addressed the lady cleric before. Had his voice been deeper? Much deeper.
Vicar?
Another voice. This time he looked up slowly, and as soon as he saw the silver platter with a single ornate chalice, he jolted. He grabbed hold of it with both hands, and without examination, poured it into his mouth. Alcohol often tastes poorly and will not be described as a delicacy comparatively. It also burns the throat at times, but was consumed regardless, for such was the desire for its effect. The holy blood tastes little. A faint hint of iron, but a stronger sensation of what could be best described as a summer evening. At least it was what Lawrence experienced, as many tell of different sensations. But pouring greedily down from the cup, the taste escaped him completely, for the sensation was ecstatic. Not like the drink chased away his troubles, but rather gave him the control to alone keep them at bay. A sobering experience that one could easily become drunk on. He felt more in control of his whole being like never before, and was made more aware of his worries and how to approach them. His mind now regaining the mastery over itself, nothing could touch him. He turned his head up to see the woman standing like a statue with the platter held down. Her face was turned down, so the hair in her face concealed her eyes. He still saw how tears had graced her cheeks. Seeing that was the worst experience of the day. But with his control granted by the holy blood, he easily chased the bad thoughts away. With his head turned back towards the grand cathedral gate, he struggled with a duty-bound urge to intervene at the increasingly distraught and chaotic mass of people being warded off by the blue robes. Anselm tried instead to focus on the relief of not having to deal with such a mess. After all, they were in Cathedral Ward, and one could think what they wanted about the guards' methods. It would make little difference. He could see on his friends' faces that they most undoubtedly thought much like himself of the situation. They descended the long way of steps down to the round plaza in silence, where one of them voiced their opinions.
I can't believe it, honestly.
Strange indeed. But did we not know? They had stopped and gathered at the gate leading onto the round open space, with the sounds coming from above and behind growing in volume and in more disturbing qualities. They continued to distance themselves.
Well, perhaps it is not as bad as it sounds. I mean, they apparently have control over it.
Yeah, ha, sure they have.
All I'm saying, we've never had to deal with something like a beast before, so those hunters must be doing a good job.
Speak for yourself! The slightly younger man next to him blurted out suddenly and stopped in his tracks. The man, having defended the situation, immediately grew wildly apologetic.
Now hold on there. I did not mean it like that. You know it.
Yeah, sure you didn't. You still have your mother left around and only has to think about work. It's only work and work for you. Ansem grabbed his shoulder tight.
It's all right. He did not mean it, okay?
The young man grew quiet, but had apparently, judging by his eyes, not accepted the matter. It's the blood, he finally muttered. The blood. That's what's turned my mother.
Let it go, Per. You were young and could not have known what was going on.
Yeah, you have nothing to be blamed for. No disrespect, but who knows what your mother was up to?
Per flashed a life-ending look at the man, but remained defiantly quiet.
Or she was just unlucky. She might have overindulged just slightly. It was out of your control anyways.
I wish there were no holy blood. I mean it. He finally said through gritted teeth. I don't care what good it may have done to you all. It only killed my mother. Anselm had, since the beginning, felt more sympathetic towards him than others. But every time he attempted to fathom a mother turning mad on the spot and behaving like a wild animal with a desire for warm blood, his imaginative ability became lacking. Look, I understand you are in pain, but perhaps it is the clerics who should know. If they became aware of the damage they caused, maybe they would put more effort into solving it. But you cannot go around being mad about it now. pair snorted and turned away from them to spit.
Yeah, they ought to know, all right. To know just how many others this has happened to. All because of the holy blood. It's like I'm the only sane person around here seeing it.
The incident from the church had bothered Anselm throughout the day, more than he had thought it would. Most vexingly, he did not fully recognize why it was so troubling. A bit of commotion in the light of bad news was not that aggravating to his mind. So why did it appear so unsettling to him? Walking through the nightly streets of Yharnam, it was no wonder such concerns crept back into his mind. A late evening, as he had deliberately preferred the company of his mates over the solitude of home. When he turned off the main street for a shortcut, he saw another man walking slowly ahead of him. He was perhaps drunk, since he walked just a bit irregular and tossed his head around unnecessarily observantly. It made himself slow down in order to not gain on the somewhat unsettling character. Eventually, something seemed to gain the man's attention, and he stopped. Feeling it was more strange of himself to do the same, he crossed onto the other side of the street and continued, even more slowly, curiously observing his mannerisms. He was searching for something down a little alleyway, falling outside of the streetlights. The man then walked into the darkness, vanishing. He was relieved and abandoned the mystery, continuing his walk normally. Two quick sounds caused him to throw himself over a small stone wall into a narrow space in front of a house. The first had been a thud of some kind. The second had been of the same quality, but a bit more distinct as wet and impacting with something hard. His instincts had told him that the man must have been up to no good and gotten into trouble, but everything resumed to be eerily quiet. No more tussle, no angry grunts of a drunken brawl, nothing. It prompted him to stand up and investigate the occurrence. He crossed the street and stood where the man once had, peering into the dark abyss. He stepped forward precariously as his eyes could not adjust. When he merged with the darkness just slightly more, he distinguished a dark heap laying ahead of him. Once he stepped even further, he could confirm it was the man from before, his skull now crushed. His heart skipped a beat at the realization, but it was not his first sighting of the recently deceased. He was wearing an uncommon form of the holy shawl and was dressed much more like a prestigious teacher than a cleric. He must have been one of the researchers, but how queerly he had behaved just prior. Another sound appeared to him, and he almost took off running, but it astonished him so heavily he was compelled to uncover its qualities. Someone was taking rapid, quivering breaths. But that was not all. Accompanying it was a sound that made his skin crawl. Flesh was being rendered violently, and blood was being spilled in a rhythmic fashion, not at all sounding like a fight, but more like someone conducting a strained task. He darted towards the corner, but as soon as his feet had started to sound over the stone, The sound had stopped, and he found nothing. When Luna had walked through the door, the house had laid in darkness. She had proceeded to walk about through the grand rooms, finding no Lawrence, but only that the servants had departed for the evening. The experience of arriving home to an empty house was largely unknown to her, since Lawrence would always be there before her. So she had turned, not even throwing her coat off, and walked back out into the dusky evening towards the grand cathedral. It was but a short walk, yet her way back made her feel strange. To always walk the same distance every day to the safety of home was seldom accompanied by serious pondering. But now, making a trip out of the ordinary, she had a new eye for the darkened streets of their town. An empty place, devoid of people despite the merry hour. Suddenly, the cathedral ward did not seem as safe anymore. Suddenly did the thoughts of beasts in the dark dominate her mind. Suddenly she did not feel as Luna, provost and head mistress of the school of Mensis, but simply as Luna, a townswoman, afraid of what lurks in the dark. After walking up the stairs from the entry, she first saw the golden shimmering shrine to the gods, glowing from the candles, and the insecurity was banished. Only one silhouette rose up from the benches in the front, the familiar one of Lawrence. Only when she had made it half of the way down the center aisle did he turn his head. He looked very sad as the shadows from the lights cast from behind him painted his face. Sad from what was unknown. He made attempts to stand, but sat back down as Luna was quick and determined in her march. She calmed her steps when she came up beside him. He looked down into his hands, which lay in his lap.
Here you are.
She sat beside him and cast her eyes upon the shrine. You should not have come, he said with a faint tremble. She looked over but did not find him looking back.
Whatever do you mean? I knew you'd be here.
The streets. You ought not to walk them after dark. She rolled her eyes.
Oh, you. Has there ever been an incident in Cathedral Ward? I think not. Or is there something I should know?
She said lightheartedly, unsuccessful in smiting him with the same aura. 'Tis all the same. Have you no fear for the night?
Come now, dear. I won't amount to much by living in fear.
His hands clenched into fists, and they trembled. Judging by his posture, it was likely due to desperation rather than anger. You ought to. She jumped closer right next to him, so she could lay a hand on the wrist of his balled fist.
Why are you here? Tell me, I beg of you.
He inhaled and lingered on the first syllable of his word, as if it would cause him pain to speak. Because I am afraid. He finally said sharply, spitting out the words. Afraid of the blood. There you have it. After all these years, Luna, I am afraid. Are you not too? She was speechless. She wanted to comfort him, but found her body frozen by the raw expression and purity of terror that carried within his voice and their meaning. But what has frightened me the most? Not the blood nor the beasts, but that I will fail. That I will fail you, my dear, and all else.
Oh, Lawrence. Sweet Lawrence.
How can I take your praise and love? How am I worthy if I fail? His voice failed him, and the sentence devolved into a strange, guttural groan before he fell into silence. Unmoving, and returned to stare back into his open palms in his lap.
Saw cleaver. One of the trick weapons of the workshop, commonly used in the hunting business. This saw, effective at drawing the blood of beasts, transforms into a long cleaver that makes use of centrifugal force. The saw, with its set of blood-letting teeth, has become a symbol of the hunt, and only grows in effectiveness the more grotesquely transformed the beast.